heard, I'm the director here at the Chetco Community Public Library. For those of you that don't know me, thank you very much for coming, and thank you for going to the prior meeting over at the Elks Lodge. I think this is a productive day, and so I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say throughout this process as well. So just an order of operations here. I'm going to give a little bit of background about how we've gotten to this point, and then talk a little bit about the libraries. And then we have 3 people here to give a brief talk, and they'll answer your questions as well. For those of you at the last session, you know Frank Stratton, the Executive Director of Special Districts Association of Oregon, which I am going to refer from now on as SDAO. Jeremy Skinner, who is the Director of the Curry Public Library in Gold Beach, and then Ron Downs, who is General Counsel for SDAO. And I also have 2 board members still here, 3 board members. So Pat Piper is the chair of our library board. Judy Seil is the treasurer and this year's budget officer, if you heard them talking about that. And then Russ Olheim, I believe, is here. Oh, right behind her. Okay. So those are 3 of our 5 board members. And they'll answer questions if you have any for them as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and talk a little bit about what's happened thus far. And for those of you that don't know how all of this came about and what's been going on, you've probably gotten the gist of it, but I'll fill you in on some timeline details. So in August, I received an email from Commissioner Pash asking to meet with us, or the board, to discuss library finances. And so at that time, we just invited him to the next board meeting and said, you're welcome to come, and we'll discuss it there. We put that on the agenda. And so he and Julie Smelger came to our board meeting on September 13th. And at that time, it was a loose conversation. It was just them looking at our finances. And he essentially asked if the board would be willing for us to loan money or give money to the county for a set period of time while they looked for more permanent funding sources. At that time, a number wasn't thrown out. It wasn't anything official. The board and myself expressed concerns and asked questions about all of that, and specifically the legality of it, which at that time he said Curry Council said that there was some wiggle room for legality for that. Essentially at that time, because it was just him coming, the board instructed him that we can't really give a formal response without a formal request, and so directed him, you know, if you come back with something formal, then we'll have something to respond to. With that, he, at the, I think, next Board of Commissioners meeting, that was on September 18th, he brought up the topic with the other commissioners. I was there, and a couple of board members were there, and Jeremy, I think, was there as well. And so there was a pretty good discussion about it at that point. Sue Gold, you know, she's kind of been the vocal party in terms of wanting to push this back to the voters. This needs to be a voter issue. This needs to be a voter issue. And so I spoke and said a few things, one of which is that I would advise the library board not to give that money. And Pash at that time, the conversation kind of went on for a little while, and it ended with Pash saying that he and Julie would work on getting a special district workshop together. So that's probably what today came out of, or the meeting earlier today. Some of you may have seen that Pash had a guest column in the pilot, and then I had a guest column in the pilot. You know, there was no animosity or anything. It was just, he stated his opinion, I stated my counter opinion, and that was the end of that. So at the October 23rd Board of Commissioners meeting, I think Pash and Julie had worked out their plan to propose to the rest of the commissioners. And he proposed that the commissioners submit a formal request to the library for us to give $250,000 per year for the next 3 years to the sheriff's office, and $50,000 a year each year for the next 3 years to the Langlois and Agnes libraries. The total over the 3 years would be $1,050,000. So he also additionally asked us to voluntarily put up a ballot measure to lower our permanent tax rate. So those were the things that he thought that should happen. At that time, Commissioner Boyce said that, you know, we asked about would he be asking this of other districts, and Pash stated that there were a total of 9 districts that he felt were overfunded or should be looked at in this manner, and he was already working up a few proposals, one of which was for Curry Public Library. So we don't have an identification for the other 7 districts that he was speaking of, but Boyce said that he's not in favor of it being a request for one district. You can't just target one district. If PASH wanted to come back with a request for all of the districts, then that would be another thing to discuss. Sue Gold, again, just stated that she thinks this is something that the voters should deal with. And she kind of, so that motion did not get seconded, and so it died on the floor. And then we have the meeting today. So that's the timeline of how we've gotten to where we are today. I do want to point out a couple of things. I think that Frank, your presentation was great, and I learned a lot there, and I think probably a lot of people did. But PASH has said a couple of times in the public meetings, that the biggest drag on why governments are failing today is because of special districts. So he believes that special districts are claiming the money that people are willing to pay, and so that money is then not getting to the county government. That's my assessment of why he's saying that. And on his Facebook page, before he scheduled this, he also did state that his intention was to educate the people of the county that don't understand special districts and the drag some of them have on the county. I mean, if you're getting all the money you want every year and not have to answer to anyone on how you spend it, why would most want to change that? So his goal, and he's being public with it, I'm not saying anything, his goal is to look at special districts. He thinks we get too much money, he thinks we're not accountable. So just a few points answering those claims on that PASH has said certain things and my response to those. He has repeatedly said that the library gets a 3% increase each year. If you were at the prior session, you know that it's across the board. Everyone gets 3% a year. We're not growing exponentially. Everyone is allowed a 3% increase, and that's what happens, and that doesn't quite cover our PERS increase, let alone cost of living and expanding services and all that. So we've also had some criticism against us from him and maybe others about us having too much in reserves. And that has come up quite a bit. And so I just want to explain that money and why it's there, how it got there, and what we're going to do with it. So when the building was built, there was a 15-year loan, and that 15-year loan was paid off in 12 years. So at that time, the board decided to take that money that was going towards the loan repayment and put it aside for future repairs, future projects. That was done for a few years. We've gotten some donations, nothing huge. I've heard a couple of times that we received $1 million donation. We have never received $1 million donation. Our former treasurer said the biggest one that we got was in, I think, around 260,000. Oh, 173,000, our treasurer says, so trust her over me. And that was long ago, before the library was built, and it was for the library, new building, I believe. I don't know. Judy's correcting me. No, go ahead.
There was a bequest about 4 years ago of that amount.
Oh, okay.
So that was the biggest.
That's the biggest one we've received. Yeah, I think there maybe, I don't know where that $1 million is coming from, but that's never happened. So that money, well, yeah, if anyone has it, come on. So that money was set aside, it's invested in the local government investment pool, and it has been for years, and it's been steadily growing. And that money is designated as a library improvement fund. That means we have to spend it on facilities, repairs, expansion, those sorts of things. And that has been a purposeful effort to save that money, because this building is now 26 years old, and we have to replace the roof, we have to replace the carpet, the parking lot needs repaired, the HVAC is dying. So we have major projects that are coming up in the next couple of years. So you guys will see that reserve steadily going down. And in addition to that, we are out of room. I know this is a really large library, but one of our most utilized services is meeting rooms. And we are booked constantly. We have to turn people down all the time for meeting room space. And so I'm looking at ways to try to figure out how to add more meeting rooms. So we are working on all of that. PASH said that we get all the money we want and we don't answer to anyone. We do. We answer to you guys. We answer to the voters. Everything we do is public. Our budget documents are all public. We pay to get audited every single year, and that audit is available to all of you to view on the Secretary of State's website. You know, we abide by these laws, and this board, prior to me coming, now, they've always done it well. They're on top of it. They're fiscally responsible. They're following all the laws. So I just wanted to address that part. He did say a couple of times again today that the county only receives $1.9 million for all of the county operations, while the library receives about $800,000. That's what we're projected to receive, and how excessive that is compared to what they get. But the county, as Frank said in the meeting before, gets money from all sorts of sources, and he keeps quoting this $1.9 million amount, even though their annual budget is $67 million. And they have reserves themselves, you know. So it's just, I'm not saying he's giving false information, but it's not the whole story. So I just wanted to point those things out. So you, our community members, they all voted to invest in special districts and in this library and in Jeremy's library. And as Frank said, you guys pay the lowest property tax rates in the state. And I think we do pretty good with the money that we do get. If we were under the county, you guys would have to vote to dissolve the district, and that would be a whole long process. But we would have to fight the other departments for money. He said he doesn't want to do that, but there are county-run library systems in the state, and it's not quite as simple. They can't be as responsive to their community members as we can, being a special district, because we respond directly to the voters. And then finally, I want to say this board has no intention of giving your tax dollars intended for library services to the sheriff or even to other libraries as was requested. We've gotten a legal opinion on that, and it confirmed what we already believed, which that's not legal. You guys dictated funds for us for library services in this district, and we cannot spend that money elsewhere, and we wouldn't, okay? So that was just the rundown of what I wanted to get across here today. So I'm going to introduce a few people, and we have two people. I don't know, did you want to talk, Ron? Did you have?
I'm here to answer any.
Okay, so Ron's here for questions. I'm going to let Frank say a little bit, Jeremy say a little bit, and then one of our board members also wants to speak for a little while, and then I'm going to open it up to questions. For the questions, there are green cards. If you don't already have one, they're on the back table, or Eric and Linda are two library employees. They have them. Just wave if you want one. That's a question card or a comment card. We'll call you up, and I would like you to come up and use this mic if you have a comment. Your comments will be limited to 2 minutes, and questions we'll try to read for you, and we'll get through what we can. So my goal is to wrap this up by 6 if we can. I don't think that should be a problem. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Frank. Sure.
Hello, and thank you for inviting me to be here today, Julie. And I'm just going to, I think, comment on, at the end of the presentation today, Commissioner Pesch said that County Council disagreed with our interpretation of how the money from the districts can be used, I think specifically the library district. And so in advance of this meeting, we hired the local government law group to do an independent legal opinion for us. We do have 2 attorneys on staff. We have Ron Downs, who's been involved in public law for probably 30 years, as well as an associate attorney who has about 15 years of experience. But we also went to the local government law group out of Eugene. They're one of the most highly respected firms in the state, and their specialty is only in local government law. And so I wanted to read you I'm not going to read you a lot, but something really quick on what they said and what we asked. So we said, can a library district permanent tax rate be permanently reduced either by the board itself or through a voter-approved ballot measure within the library district? Notwithstanding the answer to the question above, can a library district board voluntarily decide to collect less than its permanent rate? Short answer, no. To permanently lower a permanent rate, the legislature must amend state law or the Constitution must be amended. However, yes, a library district board may voluntarily decide to collect less than the permanent rate by following the process outlined in the Oregon local government budget law. In doing so, the board must act in the best interests of the district. Again, that money would stay with the taxpayers, not go to some other government entity. Second question, can a library district board voluntarily give funds to the county for non-library related county services? Answer, no. Library district board may only use library funds for library related purposes. However, if the board determines that providing such funds serves a proper library purpose, example, paying the county for accounting services, etc., then such a contract is permissible. In doing so, the board must act in the best interests of the district. The district cannot, in conclusion on that, so in conclusion, a library board may also voluntarily decide to provide funding to a county as long as such decision is both, underline both, for a proper public purpose and only for a library activity specified in ORS 357. So seems very clear to me based on this legal opinion we've obtained, and we've talked to a lot of other attorneys out there that share this opinion. So if the county legal counsel disagrees, we can have those discussions with him as well. And just wanted to let you know, as an organization, for those of you here that are from special districts, we are here to support you 100%. So I think you can rest easy at night. I mean, if the county decided that they're going to go ahead and press this issue, that their county council disagrees and they're going to somehow come after your money, and you decided, and we would encourage you to sue them for that, we would 100% join you in that lawsuit and help you pay for that lawsuit. And number two, if the county decided to go, that they need to go to the legislature, because some of these issues said, again, that they would need to change either legislation or the Constitution. Constitution meaning the voters of Oregon would have to change it. But if they decide to go to the legislature with some plan or proposed legislation, we have very good support and clout at the Oregon legislature with our staff and our lobbyists. And you can rest assured that that would never happen. Thank you.
I just want to make one comment on that, and sorry I'm losing my voice. The whole reason behind this permanent tax rate limitation issue is that it's not a local ballot initiative issue. It is a statewide issue. It was established by the legislature on a statewide basis. That's why when you hear the reference to, well, it requires a change in the state law or in the Constitution, that's where that comes from. And the only way you can change that permanent rate is at the state level, meaning it affects every taxpayer in the state of Oregon. You can't just issue a local initiative measure to change the permanent tax rate locally. There's nothing in the law that allows that. And if the legislature wanted to do that, and that was one of the messages in this opinion, was that if the legislature so chose to do that, they would have provided for that in statute. They would have provided for a process. And believe me, there's a lot of different statutes that affect public entities. Public contracting law, the budget law, the Constitution itself, all of the enabling statutes that affect districts, the ORS 198 that sets out the process for forming a district, it would be set out in that, and it's not. And so that's the opinion that we've gotten from the local government practice group and some respected lawyers that we've been working with. So that's what that means, folks.
Can I ask you a follow-up question?
Sure.
So if a push was made to dissolve a district, could it then be reformed at a lower tax rate, or would it be reformed at the same tax rate?
That's a good question. I think it could be reformed.
At a lower tax rate?
At a lower tax rate at the time. But let's be clear about that. The push to dissolve, let's say, this district, it's not an arbitrary thing. So you can't have a situation where the county could wake up one day and say, we're going to go ahead and dissolve the library district. Can't do it. They can't just do it. That's the process for dissolution, as well as mergers and consolidations, are in statute under ORS 198. And it's very specific.
Okay.
Sure.
Chairman?
I'm Jeremy Skinner, and I'm the library director for the library in Gold Beach, known as Curry Public Library, which is a little confusing. We're not a county library, we're a special district. I'm also the chair of the Curry County Library Network, so I think I'm here for a few different reasons, but from my own perspective, I want to sit here and listen to what you have to say and potentially answer questions if they relate to what the libraries as a whole do to work together in Curry County, because consolidation, merger, those types of things are interesting. They're interesting to consider, but I guess I'm not going to say a whole lot, but we do work together. We work together a lot, the 5 libraries in Curry County. So we meet on a monthly basis. We also meet with the library directors in Coos County because we share a catalog with them. So we voluntarily do a lot of things to provide efficiencies. The Port Orford Library does cataloging for Agnes, is a really good example of that. The Port Orford Library right now helps provide overall services to the Langlois Library while they're in transition with their staffing. The libraries as a whole invest in digital resources that we share. We split the cost of the courier service that moves books between Coos and Curry counties. I don't want to get into great detail on that, but I guess what I do want to say is that from a cursory look at this on my part, this doesn't if we were to look at merging or consolidating library districts, I know nothing about the other types of districts. But if we were to look at libraries, I would be hard-pressed to actually find savings, and particularly one that could be passed on to the voters. So that's really the point I wanted to say. If you want to ask further questions about how we work together, I'm happy to answer those all. I'm happy to answer anything that I can about libraries in general. So thank you.
And I'm going to have Pat Piper come up. She's our board chair.
This is the Curry County budget. If anybody wants to download it and be given a reason to not be an insomniac, I suggest that you take a good hard look. I'm trying to not be in an adversarial position with the county commissioners because they have a tough job, okay? But some of the things that you need to know is that I'm an elected official. You guys elected me to be on the board of directors, and I've been doing it for one heck of a long time. And now I'm the chairman of the board, or chairperson, or chairwoman, or whatever that is. The commissioners are voted in. If you don't like something a commissioner's doing, that's how we're going to resolve it. You're going to have to vote them in, vote them out. But I think we should try really hard to work together to get it resolved. Now, one of the things I wanted to mention when you're talking about the amount of taxes, the board of directors here has made the decision to not take all the tax money due to it for 5 to 6 years. We've only in the last couple of years taken the full amount. We didn't think we needed it. Now we're seeing a bunch of changes that are coming into the building and into our community, and we accepted the whole amount. So we've given the county a break for 5 or 6 years. Commissioner Pash doesn't seem to think that the library is as busy as needs to be with the money that's spent. This is my library, okay? Because I belong to the library and I'm getting to be old and decrepit, I download books on my iPad. I download audiobooks on my cell phone that I listen to constantly. I'm now studying French because the library provides free lessons in all different kinds of languages. You know, we have a room that's full constantly of people who are on the internet because they can't afford to have an internet at home, and they use our computers as a way of communicating. We have classes for young people, for old people. We have a terrific director, and we have an assistant director, Kat, who, I don't want to call her a techie, but if you have any questions about how to do this, you could contact Kat. Our library is growing, and it's growing because of people like you who are supporting. I have a cold, and I'm not just getting emotional and teary. But I do, I can get that. I just want to suggest that instead of being in our adversarial position, that we do our homework, that we try to stay as cool and calm as we possibly can be, that we know we've got a bunch of really strong people on our side, and I don't think anyone is going to do anything with our library special district, because number one, they'd have to deal with me, and number two, it's the voters that are going to see what happens.
All right, so that's just the presentation part, but we know that this is not just about this library. You know, in these conversations, they seem to have revolved mostly around SWAC and the Chetco library, but this is a broader conversation for Curry County and special districts and what's going to happen in the future. So I want to invite people to come talk. We've only gotten one comment card. Okay. All right, so pass those up. Judy will, staff will collect them, and we'll get you on, and then we can read your questions if you have any. So again, I do want you to come up here and state your piece, and I'm going to time you, and I'll let you know when your time is up. So first up is Ed Conyers. If you'll introduce yourself, where you're from, what district.
I'm actually with the Port Orford Rural Fire District, but I want to comment about the libraries. As a former math and science teacher and retired school district administrator, I can't overstress the importance of libraries and books. Books are like a time machine. You can travel to the past, you can travel to the future, you can explore the present. So before you leave, if you hadn't read a good book lately, before you leave, go check one out. And with the fire district, there was a book called Fahrenheit 451. The temperature the book burned at. If you detect that temperature, call your fire district. All right, thank you.
Up next is Teresa Lawson.
I just want to let everyone think about what the library means economically. Not just the books. I'm an accountant, and I really focus on the overall economic health of our area. And we've got a lot of issues here. We're out in the middle of nowhere, and if we're going to have any economic development and attract any businesses to this area, what's the nicest building in Brookings? What's the nicest building in Gold Beach? What's the nicest building in Port Orford?
The dog.
No, but, and when she talked about meeting space, let me tell you, there is nowhere. There are so many groups. Talk about grassroots. Oh, Lady Voice. Okay, I haven't been. I apologize. I have not been to your library, but I do know that those 3 libraries, and I'm very familiar with the Gold Beach and the Brookings one. But when all of these groups in town that want to do all of these activities, and it's wonderful, they need a place to meet. And there are not. I mean, the libraries serve so much, but they show that we aren't just, and please don't take offense to this, but just a bunch of old buildings, and, you know, that we do have some more modern. Our schools don't look that great. I wish our schools looked as good as our libraries, and it's not just looks. I smell mold when I walk into some of the schools in this county. I'm not going to name them. I'm not going to name the city. But that's not okay. And so if we want to attract what we know could just, we know we have great people. Who doesn't love our oceans, our rivers, our mountains? But we need to hold on to this, and we need the libraries to be the best they can be, and they are. They're the shining star of the county. We certainly don't need to be attacking them. So just remember the economics when you're talking to your friends, your neighbors, and other elected officials. The economics of the whole area.
Can I just, I want to add on to that. How many people in here know the population that's served by the library in Gold Beach? Any ideas? Sandy? Okay, so does anybody have a guess on how many people visited the Curry Public Library in 2018-19? 150,000. So it's actually, I appreciate that comment because there's economics involved, but there's also civic engagement. And really what our library in Gold Beach has been able to do with our meeting spaces is facilitate a level of civic engagement that I think is incredibly important.
I think they go there to buy coffee.
And I'll add to what Jeremy said. We know the population of Brookings is about 6,600. Our service population starts at the California border and goes up to just below Pistol River, and we serve over 14,000 people. So it's not just Brookings, and we do a lot for all of those people. So up next is actually another board member who came in after I introduced the board members, Peggy Gergen. Oh no, you want me to read your question?
Oh, I can ask it.
Okay.
One of the things that, I forgot to take my chair. One of the things that Commissioner Posh asked or told the board when he came to meet us several months ago, excuse me, was that he was asking us to give $50,000 a year for about 5 years to the county to be used by the Sheriff's Department. And so I was wondering if that were actually a proposal, would that go around the law? That's because we're in the city of Brookings, we don't necessarily need the Sheriff's Department here.
No, it's, as this legal opinion said, only allowed to use your funds because the statute says you can collect tax funds for library services. You cannot be a police agency, you cannot give money to another agency for police. In fact, I would argue that the lady from the local government from budget law presentation, Department of Revenue, she had a quote up there from the local government budget law manual that said, under your budget, you're not allowed to spend money outside of your purpose without it being essentially a crime and you being personally liable. And I would argue that disinterested or an interested taxpayer, if you gave money directly to the county to support police, you're taking money away from what they voted on and what they're paying for. They could challenge you, not only challenge the district, but you could potentially have personal liability yourself.
Thank you, that's exactly what I wanted to hear.
I will add that I have mentioned to Pash and Julie and to the Board of Commissioners, the right way to go about partnering is through interagency contracts. And if there were something that we could partner with for the county that was appropriate and helpful for them and us, the library would be happy to look at that. If it was shared IT services or any number of things like that. We're not opposed to working with the county at all. We're happy to partner with any community agencies we can, and we do all the time. So I have a question that was mostly answered from Joe Reber, who is on the chair of the Langlois board.
I'm not chair.
Oh, you're just on it, sorry. Jeremy, you pretty much already answered this, but I will pose it again in case you have any additional comment. She wants to know if you see any benefits in merging all Curry libraries into one big special district.
I have not studied that thoroughly. What I have done is I took a really quick look at what the average pay was between the districts, and I think that I mean, it varies a little bit, but even with executive salaries. And so usually when you're talking about something like a consolidation or a merger, you're talking about trying to save on admin, which, you know, on some mornings I empty the trash, so I don't.
Plunge toilets.
I don't know. I don't know about that. But the average salary, taking into account library director salaries, is around $18 an hour right now, I believe, across all the libraries in Curry. And I think that to be able to provide something, first of all, to hire somebody at an executive level to manage 5 libraries
Very far apart.
would be, you'd have to hire under directors, and you'd be paying them probably roughly what our directors get paid right now. So, and then on top of that, you'd add a top-level executive salary. So what I said before, what I can say, so I haven't done a thorough study of this, but what I can say is that we meet on a monthly basis and we talk about efficiencies because we care about efficiencies. Actually, we care about efficiencies, but we also care about learning from one another. So, you know, this is one of the great advantages that we have. We have SDAO that provides trainings, all kinds of trainings for us, but we also organize our own joint training among the libraries that's more library specific. So I don't have a definitive answer to that, Joe, but to me it would be, I'm not really sure where the efficiency would come from.
Coming from a big library system in Ohio, that was a 9-branch system that served a very large county of 80,000 people, and then that had 1 director, and then most of the branches had branch managers, which if we transition to this, that would essentially be probably what happened here. And what happened there is the services amongst all of those branches are homogenized. So you have one person directing all of the things that are happening at all of those branches, and you want some cohesion, and you want there to be, you know, branding across the system so that people know it's all from the same place and the same funding source. So in my opinion, I think what would happen is all of the libraries would lose their ability to respond to their individual communities. So today, if something happens in Brookings, we can plan a training or a class about that, like we're doing this. If the director was based in Agnes or Langlois, that would be a lot harder for each individual community to do. So there are advantages, but I think they're far outweighed by the disadvantages.
One thing to keep in mind too is some of the comments about consolidations and mergers have revolved around reducing the tax rate. But I think those of you that were at the other presentation from the Department of Revenue, she explained how that works, that if you merge all the districts together, essentially then you take the total assessed value and the total collections, and then you calculate that to come up with a new permanent rate for everyone. So it stays the same. The total tax dollars collected ends up being the same amount of money. It's just distributed to everyone differently, and that's what is the complicating factor sometimes in consolidations and mergers, is that it means that people in one district would then be paying more than they used to, and then people that are in the other districts would be paying less. And sometimes that's not a huge issue if they're close, but if there's large discrepancies, that can be a real issue to get by the voters, because it would have to go to an election.
All right, next up for comment, we have Dan Sherman.
Yes, hello and thank you. And I realize that this is really just kind of preaching to the choir, so to speak. So did everybody get a copy of the words that we're going to sing? Once upon a time, very recently, I had a show called Brookings Cafe on the community radio station here, KCIW. And one of the shows that I did very recently, a couple of months ago, I guess, I don't know, I'm getting old enough where I can't tell how much time has actually gone by, but I had 4 librarians there, and Pat kind of told a little bit about what the library does, but she just scratched the surface. It used to be libraries had books, And maybe they had some records. I think records were around at least when I was a kid at the library. Now they have so many services that it's just mind-boggling. But if you will go to kciw.org and then go to Brookings Cafe, under programs, I think is what it is. All four of the librarians that I had, there's two in the back and one here, Eric and
It's Linda, she wasn't there, but yeah.
Linda wasn't. That wasn't computing for me. So, but Lorraine was, and Pierre was there as well. Anyway, they were all wonderful to host, and we talked about libraries and the services that they offer, and I found it a very educational experience. So I would encourage you to go to kciw.org. Programs, I think is what it is, Brookings Cafe, and then look for the particular episode on libraries. Thank you.
Next up is Connie Hunter.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm Connie Hunter, and I live in the city of Brookings, and I'm about 4 inches shorter than when I came in because my shoe malfunctioned. So if I'm up here in my stocking feet, that's why. I'd like to talk a little bit about messaging. Anchor institutions have missions, and of course, the library are anchor institutions, as are our college. It's not unusual to see a conflict of roles between the county and special districts. But it's important to have conversations around those differences of roles. Having worked with Dr. Michael Harry, who's credited with changing the culture of corporate America, and much of his work is currently changing the VA system. One thing that he was quick to point out is tension rises between groups when there are just differences in roles. The county's role is different than a special district's roles. So the county requesting to reevaluate tax rates in a general way and to look at the special districts and whether those tax rates still make sense, especially those that have been around for a while. That's simply Commissioner Chris Pash, U.S. Marine Corps service member, doing a sit rep. When he came on the job, he made it very clear that he wanted to make sure that we were getting return on our investment, bang for our tax dollars. So I think the question about having so much money in reserve at the library, and I really appreciated the fact that you brought up project budgets are going to be used against that district reserve, and answering what that, what's going to be done with that money is hugely important, because basically the point of view, and I had this conversation with Commissioner Pash this week, is the tax dollars sitting around in the bank account and not being planned to be used. If you are accumulating a lot of reserve and you don't have plans for that money, that might be an indicator that your tax rates are too high. And that's all that this is about. Exploratory conversations are a jumping off point. So this is really important to be having this conversation. Fiscal responsibility and cost savings and return on investment are huge. And there are 3 steps to development in a community. You have affecting public policy, strategic acting, strategic planning, and creating resources. Commissioner Pash is going, number 1, let's look at that public policy. Are we where we need to be? The second piece of that is strategic action and strategic planning. This call to action, this meeting, and the earlier one today, and the conversations that have to happen, okay, that's where we need to head. And it's not about adversarial, it's about differences in roles and getting bang for our tax dollars.
Thank you.
I make a comment? I know that there's been a lot of comment about the amount of money that's held in reserve by the library. Would anyone care to comment about the amount of money held in reserve by the county?
I think you mentioned that at one point. Let me see if I have it in my
I
notes.
believe it's over $5 million.
Yeah, I mean, they do keep commenting on that, so let me see if I have it in there. And again, I think part of this issue, it does go along with what she was just saying, is messaging and getting the information out there. They have reserves, and I'm sure those reserves are there for a reason. We don't know
Just like
those
us.
reasons, just like the library. There is a plan in place, and there has been for decades, for that money, and perhaps the missing piece was sharing that with the public. But we do make it available to the public, so.
And just for one more clarification, like I have no idea on the history of your board, but you did note in your comments earlier that that money was restricted. So once money is officially restricted by the board, like there's a defined purpose as to how it can be spent, and in this case, there's a defined purpose. So.
Yeah, library improvement, for sure. And it also is not all tax money. We are not taking, like $100,000 every year from what we're collecting in taxes and rolling it over into this fund. That's not what's happening. Early on, there was an effort to get something going for catastrophe and those sorts of situations. And the vast majority of that is now growth from investment. And so we spend your money. If we get money, we spend it. And I'm happy to show you our budget so you can see exactly what we're spending it on. Judy?
Also worthy of mentioning that the investment pool with the state treasury has actually had 3 interest rate drops since December of 2018. So the amount that we make in interest on that library improvement fund is declining, not increasing. Do you understand what I'm saying? Maybe another interest increase during this year, unknown, but we've already seen 3.
Next up is Doug Bunn. Here you are.
Can I ask a quick question and a comment? Jeremy, I was wondering about attendance at your budget committee meetings. Are they very well attended? Could you kind of comment on those?
We have a full budget committee, so our budget committee members, so we have 10 people at least that attend. Beyond that, from the general public, it's been pretty sporadic, usually none, sometimes 1 or 2. Actually, it kind of depends on what's going on, because when we were working on facility expansion, we had a number of friends of the library participate in our budget meetings because we were working very closely with them on the fundraising, and it was important for them to be in alignment with us on that. But it's not something that people come out in droves for.
Thank you. Doug Bunn, I'm the Executive Dean of Southwestern Oregon Community College, SWAC, and thank you all for being here. I want to say that it's wonderful that you're here. I've found that with the college, budget meetings are not well attended. They are not all that, it's not like there's all that interest outside those people who have accepted the civic responsibility of overseeing those budgets. And to those of you that are doing that, I thank you. SWAC is kind of tied into this, although I appreciate the fact that we are not a special district. I think this has gone beyond the point of exploratory. These are not comments that are coming out like, well, let's take a look. Your special district is under attack, as is ours, our community college district. There are serious problems in terms of revenue generation at the county level. I appreciate that, and I would hope that there are solutions, but I think each of these districts, including the community college district, have decided to fund. And I agree with Sue Gold to the extent that if we need to make some changes, each of those districts need to address their own house. And I appreciate your efforts to
be part of that process. Thank you.
I have a question from Commissioner Boyce. He said, thanks for coming. And, oh, I guess you're talking to me, I don't know. Thanks for coming to Curry County. Has it been common in Oregon for service taxing districts to consolidate or merge?
I wouldn't say common, but yes, it's happening more all the time, especially with fire districts. And fire districts are especially hampered by property tax revenue. And so when there's opportunities to be able to save on, as Jeremy said, administrative support, that's where the main savings is. So if you have, say, a fire district, or 3 fire districts that have heavier overhead costs, there's savings there, and those districts are working cooperatively together and actually working with city departments as well, where some cities are merging with special districts and maybe a couple of special districts. So those conversations, yes, are happening, but it's primarily, I would say, right now with the fire districts.
My back is to the audience. Is Commissioner Boyce the only commissioner here?
Yes, Pash was here. I assume he had to leave before it started, but yeah.
Thank you for showing up.
Thank you for coming.
I know you're not applauding because I'm coming up. I ran the microphone taken one time. The reason I don't often get the chance to come to the microphone, people are afraid I'm going to talk about fire, even though Mr. Conyers brought up Fahrenheit 541. What the memories come back. You're too young. And that just happens to be our area code. Go figure, right? And it's the first 3 digits of my Social Security number. I'm not going to tell you the rest of my Social Security number. But
I know our card.
What's that?
How about your debit card number?
I don't know, it's broke. Why cut it up? So, hey, thank you for this turnout. I'm going to come to my fellow commissioner defense just a little bit. It is a tough job. There's no whining here, but you offering to say, and I know you're sincere. I know Director Skinner's sincere in bringing the county together. That's the hardest job that I have. And we all have differing opinions and views and philosophies on our government. But if there's a way to do that, and this might be the start of that, I'm all in. And it's a big challenge. But as I said earlier today, we've got a lot of issues, and now's the time to attack those. And we're on our way. We have some wonderful opportunities here. And I'm going to be the first to celebrate when you enlarge your meeting room here. Thank you.
Next up is George and Allen.
Former commissioner, too.
Well, actually, I normally don't speak as a former commissioner. I like to stay out of the current commissioner's business. But I will say, at this time, I wasn't going to speak to this, but I think listening to what Ms. Hunter had said about what Commissioner Pash's approach is to this, I feel a little bit kind of, and excuse the French, a little bit like, if you pee on my shoes, don't tell me it's raining, okay? Because I think that this has gotten way more than what commissioners should be doing. When Commissioner Pash posted a letter in the paper about looking and addressing special districts, I did call him up. I normally don't get involved with commissioners and what they do. And I wanted to tell him that he was misinformed on how he saw special districts. He felt he was correct and continues to think so. But the reality is, I think commissioners do have a hard job. And one of the things we do need to do is to not go into territories that are not our purview and stir up. I think there's been a lot of time and effort and actually ill will that has been stirred up with this that never needed to happen. And I think going forward, it's important that we try to work with partnerships. I know special districts want to do that. I know It's important that the special districts, they're a partner to the county, all of them. And so to sit here and say, well, we're having a dialogue, no, you're not. I think Mr. Bunn made a comment about special districts have been attacked. And it's important for the Board of Commissioners at this point to put it to bed and move on. If Commissioner Pash wishes to go on a crusade, that's up to him. I think it's time that we just move on as a board. We have so many more challenges. As you know, Commissioner Boyce, there's a lot to be done for the county. Thank you.
Next up is Beth Barker Hidalgo.
Hi, Beth Barker Hidalgo. I live in Gold Beach, consumer of primarily the Gold Beach Library, but also here. I attend a lot of meetings in this room. And my message has been stated now twice, but I just we can't say it enough. That if respectful dialogue was the goal in the beginning of this process, the path was wrong. The path to get where we are today, look at the outcome. We're all concerned about the viability of our districts that we, the voters, have put in place. And so I think it can't be said enough right now that just step back and take a look at some of the misinformation that has been shared out into the community in this whole process. That's not how we go about having respectful and considerate dialogue about, that it is responsible for us to take a look at our systems now and again and see, are they working efficiently and effectively for our community needs? But we can start that process around the table together respectfully. That's how you have exploratory dialogue. Thanks.
Carl King, our videographer.
Carl King. I'm speaking as an individual. I've tried to stay out of the commissioner's hair, but I think we all have to recognize the change that was made in January of 2019. The Board of Commissioners chose to throw off the Budget Committee, the two members who had the most experience with county budgeting, Tom Brand and me, because we disagreed with their getting pay raises that doubled the salaries for the Board of Commissioners. And since then, they have doubled, close to doubling, I think, the salaries and expenses of their department, their staff. I think the county commissioners need to be better managers of the funds they get and stop trying to steal them from the road department, from the special districts, and through passing new costs on to property owners that have no relationship with their properties. Thank you.
That was my last comment card. We still have a little bit of time. Is there anyone else that has a question or wants to say anything? No? You guys have any closing comments?
I wasn't expecting it to end
Sorry.
quite so soon, so.
So drag it out.
Well, I want to say one more thing for the people that are in the room, and probably since you guys are library supporters, you know this, but just one last thing about libraries. Our libraries are really good. They're really good libraries. Boy, there are a lot of things I could say, but we're efficient. The Gold Beach Library every tax dollar we receive, we bring in through other sources like grants, donations. I mean, the fact that people support us with gifts the way they do is important. It shows how good of a job we're doing. But we're bringing in, well, in this particular year, between 25 and 50 cents for every tax dollar that comes in. If we were to average it out over time, it might even be a little more than that. But so we're efficient. We really are. We provide, through our network, we provide access to, I want to say, over 600,000 books.
Yeah, physical books.
And of course, none of us have the space for that in our own libraries alone, but our relationships that we have with all the libraries in southwestern Oregon provides that to you. And then we've talked about the meeting spaces and the civic engagement that we provide. There are other things that we do as well, and we're expanding those types of services. At the library in Gold Beach, Doug Bunn mentioned the coffee. People come to drink coffee at our library, and that's not
a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing, and it's not a bad thing, but we're not making money on that. That was devised as a program to provide work experience opportunities in our community, and we're working on trying to provide a little bit more stable funding for that program, but that's one of the things we do. We have an after-school program that serves 40 kids per day, middle school kids out of our library. So I don't know. Jennifer Patterson, who is the state librarian for Oregon, was at the previous meeting, and she was not feeling well and could not stay. But I think what's interesting being a librarian in southwestern Oregon, I moved here from Portland, and what's interesting is that my colleagues around the state look at the things we do and are looking at those as models. So this is a particular case where we're not, of course we look at other places to see what they're doing, but we're leading. And so if you don't know that, know that. And thank you for supporting us in that.
I have an additional comment related to that, and Teresa touched on this a little bit, but you know, Jeremy and I became librarians for a reason, and I can't speak to Jeremy's reasoning, but libraries are still the great equalizers of our society. We have a lot of people in this community who cannot afford books, who cannot afford internet, who cannot afford DVDs, who don't even have a warm place to be during the day when it's raining. And so in addition to providing tons of resources for families and helping with education and partnering, we provide opportunity for people who do not have opportunity otherwise. So I'm very proud of that work, and I think it's important to keep funding that. And we are a part of this community, and libraries make communities more vibrant. They facilitate partnerships, and we do a lot in the background that maybe isn't making it in the paper or you're not seeing it all the time. But we are busy, and we are using the money that you give us for good purpose. And I think we have a couple more comments. We do have time, obviously. Let's go Pat, Peggy, Ed, was it? Okay.
I just want to mention one of the smartest things as a board of directors we have done lately is hiring you.
You know, there's that saying that if you don't study history, you're bound to repeat it. And through this, I'm reminded that I've lived here since 1964. And back in the 90s, or back in the 80s actually, the county had so much money they didn't know how to spend it from the timber revenues. And the timber revenues obviously were going downhill. And two things that I'm currently on, the library and board, and also on the Extension Service District Budget Committee. Those two things were founded because the county was running out of money. And the wise people that were on the boards at that time said, we need to do something so we have a secure funding source. And they got busy, the 4-H leaders got busy and worked on the Extension Service District. The College Board got busy and worked on this one, and it passed quite easily. The reason you need to look at that is because you can see an example of what happens if you don't do it in the county fairgrounds. The county fairgrounds is still under the county auspices. They didn't form a service district, and they have no funding. And they have to operate totally on volunteers. And so that's the thing we have to think about. What would happen if we did disband and go back into the county? The other thing I wanted to mention is when we annexed the college into the SWAC district, one of the things they required of us was to figure out how we were going to provide library services for students. And they took a look at our libraries, and the partnership was pretty much handshake in those days, and said, you got it.
I just want to say that all special districts take their fiduciary responsibility seriously. We manage our funds well. We don't need to be inspected like little kids wasting money and buying candy and ice cream cones.
All right, thank you everyone for